So let me tell you all about the year where I interviewed 20 times to land my dream role. Yes, you heard me correctly. 20 interviews, 5 roles over a 6-month time period. Why would I even enter a gauntlet like that? 3 things were driving me. 1, I wanted freedom. I was ready to design a life that was not just built around work, but instead really honing in on what type of life do I want and how does my professional job continue to help me build that life. 2, I wanted to be closer to family. Every job that I ever had, I was always 14 plus hours away from my family. I wanted to be closer to family. 3, I was ready to drive impact at scale and continue to dive into more meaningful work. And that's how we landed at the invisible interview. So let's talk about the invisible interview. Let's hop in. So I know you're probably asking, who am I? I'm Dr. Lynch, the founder of the Excellence Factory, where we're all about driving inspiration, collaboration, and execution. And I'm also the author of The Invisible Interview. And this is kind of where we start to get into the story a little bit. At the time, I had already spent 11 plus years working in higher ed. And I've worked in higher ed across HBCUs, across Ivies. I've worked at nonprofits, big tech as well. But again, my professional experience, that's one small part of the story. Let's get into the deets about what started to change this pivot and when I really decided to leave higher ed. So first, it was when I got to Brown. Here's the thing. Brown, if you don't know, is an Ivy, and it's one of the top institutions in the world. And just being on the green, being in the cafeteria, you don't even have to do anything. But being in the container of Brown, opportunities will come knocking at your door. You get access to rooms and tables that people don't even know exist. And it really challenged my framework and how I thought as a leader. And here's what I mean by that. Is Brown activated, or let's just say Brown scaled the entrepreneur spirit inside of me. It gave me the team, it gave me the platform, and it gave me the resources to really focus on innovation and transforming as a leader. But here's the thing. I had already built my whole identity in higher ed. So higher ed was my identity. I was on the track to become a president. But again, I wanted something different. And it was at Brown that everything started to connect. And here's what I mean. While at Brown, I got access to what I call the invisible economy. And the invisible economy is essentially where your skills, your passions, what you're great at, plus your network, the people you know, your advocates, your sponsors, plus timing, all meet to help you achieve success, whatever that success might look to you. It's not always tied to money or something big, but essentially, the invisible economy is where all these 3 things come together to work in your favor. So Brown had opened up my eyes to access. I went from spending my evenings from watching Game of Thrones to having tea time with the U.S. ambassadors, speaking with politicians and different corporate partners. It really opened up my eyes to a world that I didn't know even existed. And that's when I knew I wanted to make the pivot. Because Brown had exposed me to so much, it gave me the energy that I needed to want to pivot. But here's the thing. It took me a year. It took me a year to build the confidence to say, hey, I'm leaving higher ed. So I tell you this, all it takes is 1%. If you're in the middle or if you're thinking about a pivot, you don't have to have it all figured out. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's probably not going to feel good as well. But take your time to slowly build your confidence. So I got to Brown, I got the access, my eyes opened up to the invisible economy, and I knew that I was ready to shoot my shot and leave higher ed. So once I built up all of this confidence, it was time to shoot my shot. But with who and with where? I had worked in higher ed literally most of my career, and I knew I wanted to leave, but I had no clue where I wanted to go. So I had to do some internal work first, and I started to reflect internally around the things that I enjoy, the things that I love to do, and even started to think about what companies do I have an affinity with. And I had just led a digital transformation with Salesforce at Brown that was phenomenal. I love the technology. I love how the technology was changing how our staff did work. I love how the technology was supporting students. But more importantly, I had a great relationship with the staff at Salesforce at the time. So I knew, like, okay, this is the type of energy and the ecosystem that I want to be in. So in 2020, I said, hey, we're making the move and it's going to be Salesforce. But where do we start? And that's my tip to you. Your ecosystem is your currency. People are not waiting for you to become an expert. People are just waiting for you to take the first step and to show that you want to be a part of this ecosystem, or to show that you're learning an ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, if you're thinking about a career pivot, if you're thinking about a company that you want to join, you're thinking about a university you want to join, how can you do something today to tap into that ecosystem? Can you take a class? Can you sign up for a free event? Can you meet with someone? What can you do to tap into that ecosystem? So in my ecosystem, I reached out to my account executive, Earl. And at the time, Earl and I were just professional colleagues that have grown into brothers and a mentorship and beyond that. But I reached out to Earl, and Earl was my account executive at Salesforce. Earl put me on the game. He pretty much coached me, gave me the books that I needed to read, really probed me with a lot of questions around, are you sure you're ready to go and this is what you want? And after all of that coaching, it was time to jump into the gauntlet. I read my books. I prepared my artifacts. I stopped venting on LinkedIn and started using LinkedIn strategically to position myself as well. I started connecting with different people on LinkedIn just to talk to them about what their experiences was like at Salesforce. Again, this was all before I decided to put my name in the hat. So you have to begin to really think through, what is that prep work that is going to help me seal the deal or make it to the finish line? So a lot of prep went into preparing me to jump into this gauntlet. So I jumped in, and it started with interview 1, which was professional services. Now, granted, friend, I didn't know what professional services was. I knew the concept, right? I knew it was about services that you purchased from a vendor or a partner that you were currently doing work with. That's as much as I knew. But I'm like, hey, I've helped people figure things out when it comes to technology all my life. I can do this. Nah. First interview wasn't a bad interview. It was not a bad interview at all. But the manager was like, yeah, this is probably not the role for you. But here's the thing. In that moment, I could have got sad. I could have got upset. I could have felt defeated. What turned into a no really turned into one of the biggest opportunities that started this interview process. Because that manager said, hey, you might not be a good fit for this role, but we need you at this company. We want you on this team, and you did such a great job in your interview. And it was in that moment that I started to learn the power of no. No doesn't mean a door is shut. It's about the art of the possible. When you get a no, what can make it a yes? And what is the art of the possible that can grow from that no? For me, that manager said, hey, I'm going to refer you to another manager. So I know when people think, why would you go to a website and apply 20 times to get at a company? I'm here to tell you, sweetie, I didn't apply 20 times. It was actually, I kept getting referred to different managers in the company and interviewing for different roles. So I went through those first round of no's, and by this point, I think I'm at interview 13. And I am interviewing for the business value team. Now, get this. I had just worked with the business value team at Brown as we were building the case for Brown to invest in a digital transformation. So I said, hey, I got this. I know I don't got an MBA and go to market strategy and such, but I really felt confident about this. I completed my trailheads. I got my MBA on YouTube overnight. I did all the things to get ready for this interview. And I was excited, y'all, because I made it to the last round for this interview. But when it got time to start explaining the math, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do the best job explaining the math. Even they had a chuckle. And it wasn't a shady chuckle. It was just more like, okay, we see you, you see us. Yeah, this is probably not it. So as you can imagine, in that moment, I'm not going to lie to you, I did feel defeated. I was like, I made it to the last round. It is now interview 13, interview 14, wherever we're at, 13, 14. And I just don't know if I have it in me to continue. But in that moment, the manager again said, you know what? We need to get you into the Matrix. Jessica Hood, love her dearly. She was like, we need you and you would be such a great fit here. Talk to me about your aspirations and let's see where we can find you a good fit. And that's where I got introduced to solution engineering through Jessica. She said, you should look at the solution engineering team. Just off of the name alone, I was excited because solutions I can do, engineering, that's what we do in our sleep, right? So super excited because this role is where storytelling, discovery, technology, and higher ed all came in together. Everything that I have been doing my entire career. So I was beyond ecstatic to finally say, okay, this is the role that clearly aligns with what I want to do. And now let's hop in. So I hopped in and now we're at interview 20, the final round of the panel presentation for a solution engineer. So I finally got a yes. I got the job. And as you can imagine, I was, if I didn't get this, I think I truly would have been done. But here is the thing. A lot of people ask me, well, why did you keep interviewing? Honestly, because it felt like leadership boot camp. I was interviewing for roles that I really did not even understand the terminology, but it was forcing me to go skill up every single day to become a better leader, to understand sales better, to understand corporations better. It was pushing me outside of my zone. But on the flip side, and kind of looking at it later, it was also my opportunity to campaign within the company before I joined the company. And honestly, that put me on an accelerated path because later on, even though Salesforce hired me as a solution engineer, I got to lead their HBCU engagement strategy, which essentially brought together sales, philanthropy, workforce development, technology, and intern recruitment together to create a holistic perspective on how Salesforce goes to market to support HBCUs. And I say that because, again, had I not taken that 1% step to really lean in to something I really wanted, I would have never gotten that type of experience that I got. And again, my world, the invisible economy, opened up even more because, one, it changed how I interviewed. The interviewing changed my way of thinking and how I wanted to lead. But again, working for Salesforce also just changed me as a professional. And I had opportunities to work with the White House, with Disney, with Netflix, the Olympics, Apple, really seeing that, hey, you can build a model and a life around all of the things that you love. Not to mention, let me be real with you. Working at Salesforce was life-changing money for me as well. I had already been at the bottom line of the six-figure club, but being close to making $200K a year also changed my financial psychology and my engagement and how I thought about money and how I use money as well. So the experience, the interview experience and the whole onboarding experience, again, changed everything about how I operate and how I win. But that's what led me to write the book. Because here's the thing, I started referring all of my colleagues and friends to work at Salesforce as well. And they would want to meet because they were leaving their industry. They had never worked for big tech. And I always didn't have the time to meet with everyone. So I really what I did was, after every single no that I got during the interview, I journaled about that experience. So I went back through my journal and I read all of the things that I told myself that I had learned, and I created a one-page guide, and I started to send that Google Doc to anybody who wanted to work at Salesforce. But I thought to myself, this is bigger than Salesforce. People want to leave careers. People want to get the jobs they want. People want to make good money, but they're playing an old school game when it comes to success. You can't just go to a job posting. You can't just be passive. You have to build that brand to get to that next level. I didn't want to just write a regular book neither, because as you see, again, at the Excellence Factory, we're all about inspiring you, 1. 2, how can we collaborate? And 3, how can you execute? That is the framework of this book. I wanted to create a book that had the narrative, but more importantly, give you all the tools to navigate your own interview, your own brand, or landing your own top job. So that's the real story behind the invisible interview and pretty much how we got here. I'm excited for this Excellence Factory podcast because this is an opportunity for us to bring the type of conversations when it comes to securing the job you want, the conversations around your financial psychology, being high performing, culture. All of these things can come together because it's about giving people access to information so you too can build the type of life that you want. So I'm excited. Thank you for tuning in to the first podcast of the Excellence Factory podcast, and I'll see you on the next episode.